All right, Shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Ruach Kodash. I'd like to say double honors to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, the men whom I've learned this truth from. And I'd also like to say Shalom and salutations to the elect that's out there preaching His word in truth and sincerity. I'm the Brother Shaquat from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal. Back with another lesson. In this lesson that I'm going to be getting into today, it's going to be going into a video, an excerpt that was played by the elder Monata Zakba from GMS, South Carolina. Here we go.
I have a lot of questions for Hebrew Israelites. For number one, I'm mixed. What's going to happen to somebody like me? So are white people destined for hell and black people destined for heaven? Another question I have that's very strange is like Esau and Jacob were born from the same parents. How are they a different race? And maybe somebody in the comments that even if you're not a Hebrew Israelite, you can explain like how in the world Esau and Jacob are a different race if they came from the same parents. Because I have a lot of questions for Hebrew Israelites. For number one, I'm mixed. What's going to happen to somebody like me?
Right. For the first question, right? He said he's mixed, right? So he has his parents are pretty much two different nations or nationalities, right? And I think in his case, his father is black and his mom's white. I don't know. It might be vice versa. But there's no such thing as being mixed. That concept is not true, right? And to simply explain it, if you have a seed and you plant it in any sort of soil, in any place in the world, that seed is still going to grow out to be whatever the fruit of that seed is, right? Let's say an apple. An apple seed, if you plant an apple seed in Canada, it's going to grow out to be an apple tree. But if you take that same seed and you go plant it in Madagascar, which is different soil, quote unquote, right? That seed is still going to grow out to be an apple tree, right? And in that case, the representation of the seed will represent the father, the man. Because a man, what does a man carry? A man carries seed that could be planted into any soil. And whatever seed that's planted into whatever soil is going to come out to be what that seed or who that man was, right? So to simplify your father, you are who your father is. Whatever nation or nationality your father is, that's who you are. You can't be 50% black and 50% white because of your mother. No. Whatever your father is, you're 100% that. Right? So let me get this in the book of Numbers. This is Numbers 1 and verse 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month. And they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward by their polls. So when they declared their pedigrees, they declared it, through their fathers. And their pedigrees was what? Your lineage, right? That's what the definition of pedigree is. It says pedigree, the record of descent of an animal showing it to be pure breed, right? The recorded ancestry, especially upper class ancestry of a person or a family, right? So your ancestry is traced, or in this case, in Numbers 1 and verse 8, it was traced through your fathers. Why the father specifically? Because the father is the one that carries the seed, right? So with your father carrying the seed, he is um, the how, the head. He is who you are, because he has the seed. A woman doesn't carry seed. A woman can't uh, carry seed, man. She can only cultivate the seed. Right? So there's no such thing as um, a mixed person. That concept is not accurate, man. You know. So let's go on to the
Um,
next question.
so are white people destined for hell and black people destined for heaven? Another question I have.
Uh, yeah. I mean, he's wrong and he's right, because another thing to tackle is the fact that there's no such thing as heaven and hell. That concept of heaven and hell in the modern sense is not what people think it to be, right? Because when you really look at the scriptures and analyze them, through spiritual eyes, you're gonna come to find out that heaven and hell are actually no, specifically hell is a condition, man. There's no literal hell, and then when dealing with heaven, there's more than one heaven, depending on the context or depending on what's being said in the scriptures. Um, for example, you have the heaven of heavens where the heavenly Father dwells, and then you have the heavens, which is pretty much outer space, where the bodily elements dwell, right? The moon, the stars, and so on and so forth. And then you have heaven on earth, which is a condition, right? But when you're dealing with hell, there's no such thing as hell. There's no place underground where you're burning forever, and there's a guy there with a pitchfork. There's no such thing as that. That's a fable, and it's mentioned as cunningly devised fables in the scriptures, something that was well put together to deceive the people, right? But to answer his question, white people are destined for hell, and so-called white people, right, and so-called black people are destined for heaven. That's in the sense of it being on the earth, right? Hell symbolizing them being in slavery, them being in a bad condition, man, under the Israelites, which are going to be in heaven when the kingdom of heaven comes, man. Right? That's why it's known as the kingdom of heaven, because so-called black people, right, or the Israelites, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they're destined for heaven. For rulership, because that's also another definition of heaven on when you're dealing with the earth. But it's really just to clarify. When dealing with words, you have to clarify and understand the context of what's being said. And not only that, but like the elders and apostles and bishops encourage us to do, is to look up words, man. One word has more than one meaning to it, and that's why they also push the etymology, going to the root of a word, breaking it down to the least common denominator, to get to have more clarity on and understanding on what's being said, man. Right?
It's very strange. It's like Esau and Jacob were born from the same parents. How are they a different race?
Right. Jacob and Esau. they were born from the same parents, but they came out completely different, right? And this is a guy that lacks faith. I don't know what denomination or what sect of religion or Christianity he is, but he clearly lacks faith, man. He's undermining the power of the Heavenly Father, right? Because the Lord could do that. The Lord could make it where two completely different nations come out of a woman's womb from the same parents. And that was shown with Jacob and Esau, right? And the Lord made it happen like that. But also, there's such thing as fraternal twins, man. Right? Fraternal twins or Disney Gothic, right? Versus identical twins or they call it monozygotic. I don't know how to pronounce it, but right, Jacob and Esau are fraternal twins. They're they're not identical. They're completely different. You know, and when you're dealing with fraternal twins, you might even have one that they look completely opposite to each other, right? But they come out one after the other. They're born pretty much around at the same time, right? And that was the case with Jacob and Esau. But the Lord even had it to where their spirits were completely different from each other, right? Genesis 25. All right. So this guy,
And maybe somebody in the comments that even if you're not
you know, the Lord, it's not for him. The truth is not for him. That's just as simple as it gets. The Lord doesn't want it. Doesn't want him to get it. All right. So with that being said, I'm pretty much gonna end the lesson off there. Lord willing was edifying. I want to say call Halayim La Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Ba'Shem Kakodash. Once again, the blindness to my teachers, the apostles, the bishops, and elders, a great millstone. And shalom and salutations as always to the elect. Until next time.